Welcome to the Weekly. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Chris.
And this week on the Weekly, Eclipse Phase for Fate, as well as Nano Ops. Wizards of the Coast expands Magic the Gathering.
Oh.
And Spire must fall. All right.
Must it?
It may have to. So Eclipse Phase has just announced Eclipse Phase Transhumanity's Fate. So it's a Fate-based version, I think, of the 2E, basically where the setting is. Because they released a second edition, so I think they may have moved the setting, forward or done something.
I know that second edition exists. Mm-hmm. I think I have all the first edition books, or at least in PDF format, because they released them as sort of like a pay-what-you-want kind of, please take the PDFs, then buy the books if you like what we're doing model, which I really liked. I don't know if the second edition is just a cleanup of the rules or a progression of the timeline. Because I don't really, there was a time, didn't seem to be like a meta plot, just kind of like, here's the state of the galaxy and here's what happened in the past. And so who knows, maybe they did.
Right. Yeah, so for anybody that doesn't know Eclipse Phase, it's a far-feature science fiction horror game, with themes including post-apocalyptic, conspiratorial, and transhumanity. So what do you think, is there a need, or do you think there's an advantage to porting this to Fate? Is there anything that would improve the game or anything that, because I said it's kind of a crunchy game.
It is, and I've run exactly one game of Eclipse Phase. And one of the things that attracted me to the game was the idea of re-sleeving. Because I think basically everyone's consciousness is called an ego. And the idea is that you can send that ego into different, they call them morphs, physical bodies, all different kinds of shapes and all this kind of stuff. And you can even transmit the data light years away from home. And that's kind of how you travel. Nice. You send your consciousness to like a morph rental bank, essentially.
Right.
And as attractive as that was, you could not change morphs mid-game because of the amount of bookkeeping that went into getting a new body.
You're right.
And I don't mean like bookkeeping in the game. I mean like, here's all the stats that change. Here's all these things that change. That kind of soured me on the system a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the other things that was weird is everyone has kind of like language skills, but everyone has like an AI implanted in their head that can just instantly translate stuff. So I'm kind of like, why?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's one of the best settings I've seen, and it seems like they put a lot of thought into like what post-humanity would actually look like. Wasn't really that big a fan of the system. And I thought a Fate version existed, maybe only as like a semi-official fan creation.
Right, maybe, yeah.
So not knowing what the Fate version mechanically is going to look like, I think there is a strong case for there to be a different system just based on how crunchy and unappealing, for me personally, the original was.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so I was curious when I saw that because, if they're already at a second edition, it's doing well, people are playing it. But this, can do nothing but bring more players in.
Right.
It's not like it's going to turn existing players off because it's not like they're going to... Yeah, they're not going to... now I have to play that, right?
It's kind of like we talked before about porting Pathfinder to the Savage Worlds.
Oh, right.
Kind of the only thing that does is open the door to fans of that system.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. So another thing that I heard from Posthuman Studios, the developers of the game, is that they are now producing in a collection. They've been doing these kind of sporadically, and now there is a collection of their Nano Ops.
Okay.
So Nano Ops are 2-page kind of starting scenarios, kind of starting hooks that can be dropped in any place, at any point of your campaign. So things to just kind of give you ideas to bring players into kind of more interesting little situations. So the one that was just released is the 4th, and it's called All That Glitters. Okay. And so now they're bundled together in the Nano Ops collection. So those are available, I think right now just digitally, because they're just 2 pages on DriveThru RPG. And so they're seen as one-shots. And so it's everything you need to kind of try out the game as well if you want to just kind of experience like a one kind of interaction or one session, kind of one shot.
I'll have to go give that a look because I think the the default assumption for Eclipse Phase is that your character is going to be part of a team called Firewall, which goes out and either uncovers or deals with existential threats to humanity. Because one of the things that make it post-apocalyptic was there were these like rogue AI things called I believe they're called like Titans that basically kind of decimated humanity. Most of humanity is being stored in ego banks, just their consciousness, because there aren't enough morphs to have everyone kind of back to being alive at once, which is fine. Everyone's just kind of in virtual reality. But those rogue Titans are still kind of around and seeking to kind of corrupt humanity, kind of Cthulhu style a little bit.
Oh, interesting.
Though not magically, more like they understand humanity so well, they can alter that electronic consciousness. And that's where some of the horror comes in. Where
definitely.
It's really interesting because if you're this electronic consciousness and that can be edited, or bits of it can be copied, you kind of run into this Blade Runner thing of, am I actually me, or have I been tampered with, or am I a fork of an actual
that's cool
thing? And that's the part that I thought was cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Not kind of being part of this clandestine Firewall team. Like, okay, that's fine. I was more interested in the horror aspect of, am I actually me? And I think one of the, I forget the name of the op, but one of the starting scenarios was exactly that. Like, you wake up on this spaceship kind of knowing that something is wrong because you're now in a morph that you hadn't, rented, and you have to go through the spaceship to find out like what happened to your kind of previous self. So that was really cool.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and so hopefully, I'm interested in checking out the Nano Ops too to see if they could kind of have that kind of interesting flavor, like really show off the setting and really show off the kind of stuff you can do, because I think that's good inspiration for game masters. Well, very good. Well, speaking of dark forces at work, Hasbro had an investors meeting and made a lot of announcements. And I wasn't going to pay for a Wall Street Journal subscription to find out exactly what that was. But I've got some bits and pieces here of kind of what came out of that. So they announced Universe Beyond for Wizards of the Coast. So there's a little bit of restructuring, and Wizards of the Coast is kind of their own thing. So the restructuring involves giving both D&D and Magic more prominent positions. And the structure is now three units will be consumer products, which is toys, classic board games, etc. Entertainment, which will be film, TV, licensing, and then Wizards and Digital, which is all the Wizards of the Coast plus digital licensing. So that's gonna D&D is in there somewhere, although they didn't mention it specifically. So, but the one thing that's happening with Magic: The Gathering is this new IP kind of search.
I've heard the fallout or bits and pieces of this, but not like the actual source, which is why I'm interested in hearing what actually is going on.
Right. So Universe Beyond is going to sub-brand Magic: The Gathering. So this has been done before under Secret Lair. So they did a Walking Dead series that can't be used in standard play because the mechanics are all wacky, but it sold out like crazy fast.
I think it was a limited.
And people grabbed it up. So then they were like, oh, wait a minute here. There must be something. So the first two licenses that they're discussing are Lord of the Rings and Warhammer 40K.
Interesting.
So 40K would be all like black and red decks, right?
Well, I'm sure you get like blue with like the Eldar. Sorry, I was about to say Eldar, but it's Aldari.
Right.
Specifically 40K. I could see blue. Black and red. Hey, you know what? I'm sure we'll get flamed for this, but I imagine as whatever else you want to brand them as, the heroes of the game, I bet you the Imperium of Man is going to be white.
Right, or some at least the.
And I don't mean mana color. Hey, I was sorry. I could see.
Oh,
the Space Marines and the Imperial Guard. Sorry, Astra Militarum or whatever it is now, right? Like being a force of order over like fairness and justice. That seems like a very white mana quality. So I could absolutely see Space Marines being put in white. I mean, depending on what species they do, orcs are going to be green and red. Because I mean they're impulse and destruction. Sure. Chaos, you probably have like black, red, and blue. Imperium. Again, Inquisitor stuff I could see being blue, black, and white. So who knows? I mean, it seems kind of like an You know what? I was going to say it seems like an odd IP to license, but why not combine money with money?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so I think they also looked at the point that there have been collectible card games for both of these IPs, so it's not an unsuccessful thing. And and the effort, and I'm not sure how well this is going to work, but they're trying to make these playable in standard games.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can play Space Marines versus Magic Elves.
Hey, you know what? You know what? That's fine. Given all the other settings that Magic has come up with, why not?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's true.
This is... I've never looked at a secret lair thing. I've watched like 5 episodes of The Walking Dead. Don't know what the cards looked like. It's kind of an odd combination. But again, money calls to money, whatever. And looking at past Magic sets, why not?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so and at least we'll see some new art, some new interesting Verticay art. Well, yeah, that's right. They might recycle.
I mean, I'm not saying we won't.
Yeah.
I'm just saying
the cheaper way.
The cheaper option would be to just use pre-existing art.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's depressing. Yeah, I wonder about Lord of the Rings as well, because that's a good opportunity. So they're going to produce commander decks and then, standard booster packs and starter decks and everything.
I wonder if they're going to do starter decks, because remember, we kind of started to get into Magic again. Couldn't find starter decks. Commander decks seemed to be the entry point, as well as those wealth of booster packs of here's your standard booster, here's your draft booster, here's your collector booster, here's your whatever booster, where I was just like, did we really need this? The answer is from consumer, no. From a company, why not? Because people are still going to buy it. So I should go into like corporate law or business law for the amount of time I said. As a company or from a business standpoint.
My client. Yeah. So we'll see what this is going to start happening in 2022. So we're going to see how popular this is. And maybe collectors and things are be grabbing this stuff up, even if they don't plan on playing it. So we'll see. And it is a bit of a speculators market. Yeah, there's people that buy stuff up for, for rare cards and stuff. But this opens the door to all kinds of nonsense. Because we're talking about Hasbro. So what does Hasbro have license to? My Little Pony, of course, which we've seen.
Surprised we haven't seen Magic cards of that.
Yeah, that's coming. Transformers, G.I. Joe, it just kind of goes on. So if they're going to, see a kind of a nostalgia, aspect to this, they could start really producing some crazy stuff. And you're basically going to have that, what's that game where you're like doing aliens versus Vikings versus pirates? And
I want to say mashup or smash up or something like that.
So that's what Magic is going to start looking like.
Magic was always that.
Yeah?
Or, no, sorry. The part of Magic where I really kind of started collecting it was a lot of Dominaria and like that one kind of major meta plot through line that I thought was horrifically boring and didn't really care about these characters. But once they started jumping to different parts of the multiverse, that's what it was. It was a mashup. And why not? I mean, Kaldheim, the latest one, is, Magic Vikings.
Right.
And I think Strixhaven, the next set coming out is Wizarding School.
Oh, great.
Which seems to... I mean, unless they make things non-lethal in that, or creatures don't really die, they just kind of get unsummoned. It kind of seems like an odd choice since Magic. There's a lot of combat stuff in Magic. But hey, I've said before, I am impressed at Magic continually finding decent design space within its game.
Right.
So...
Yeah, and hopefully Hasbro will leave Wizards alone.
Hopefully.
And let them do, keep the game alive and do what they do best and not just drain the popularity.
That is a concern, and I think a valid concern of, while my feeling is why not with all these other IPs, especially the ones that Hasbro owns, I can see a concern being you're just going to pump these out with kind of not as much regard to quality as you have in the past. So
right. Yeah, there was a scary quote that somebody...
Scary quote or scare quote?
Well, it could be used as both. Yeah. But a charming reskin opportunity is what one of the executives said about this kind of rebranding. And a few things that have popped up. There's actually been an appearance of Godzilla in one of the Magic card sets, so that's a possibility.
Did they say which set?
You're gonna make me appeared in the Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. So maybe it was a promo card or something.
Maybe it was something like that. And what this is also going to do, though, is as part of the synergy of their brands, is there's an upcoming Adventures in Forgotten Realms set. Yeah. So that's going to make Forgotten Realms canon or part of the universe of whatever.
It's called a fucking multiverse. You can go anywhere you want, right? You could go back in time, alternate dimensions, whatever. So from I'm not going to get all nerd ragey about, you can't have this in Magic, because why not? You know what?
Right.
It's not yours. You can do whatever you want. Just don't buy that set, But yeah, at the same time, there is, like I said, there is that concern of, is this going to water down from oversight or lots of people wanting to put their fingers and have control over their IP and mechanics? Is that going to make the game, I hesitate to say worse, because it's not like Magic has been rock solid from the past. I mean, there's been ups and downs across the set, so whatever.
And it may bring in some young players that then want to play more straightforward. They then get caught up in the new cycle of buying hundreds of dollars worth of boxes.
Now you got your choice about where you want to dump that money that could go to mortgage a house. Plastic miniatures or 40K Magic cards. Yeah.
With foil stamping, possibly. Another thing that came out of this investors meeting, which is good news for Wizards, and so Wizards of the Coast last year revenue, so 2020. Was 816 million, and that's a 24% increase over 2019. So pandemic good. Yeah. And I think because they leaned heavily into digital, that's what they were saying is the digital play for Magic the Gathering was at an all-time high. And people, because it's on every device, and you can play it in any way. And they also got less stupid about it, I think, and stopped wanting to wring every cent out of it, so you can play it kind of for free and unlock decks and things. So that's interesting. That it was a good year. The worst year for humanity was a good year for Wizards. Yeah.
But I wonder what other entertainment. Drawing a blank on the word. Anyway, I wonder how other entertainment companies have done.
Oh, I think
because if people are staying home and looking for things to do, then you're going to see an uptick in stuff.
And Amazon, and there's so much, Uber Eats and Amazon and stuff, I'm sure have done wonderfully through all of this. But so we'll see what happens. So this is we just passed the 20th year of Hasbro owning WotC. So they haven't run it into the ground. Yeah, they purchased them in 1999 for $325 million. That was a pretty good investment because it's returning pretty big, especially during the downfall of humanity. All right. But so I don't know how to segue out of this.
Yeah, sure.
More about elves, I guess.
Moving on to.
But this really caught my eye, and I think this has kind of come in and out of my periphery, and I've always been interested in this setting and wanted to talk a little bit about this game. So there's an indie game called Spire Must Fall, and basically it's elf versus elf, and it's a war, like a fantasy war setting with kind of a little bit of a morality or kind of ethical concern.
Is this an offshoot or an extra, again, the word fell out of my head, to a game called The Spire? Or is this something different?
Well, I don't know. Let me tell you about the setting and see if it is connected. So it's a fantasy punk RPG about rebellion, brutality, and oppression. So the tagline is, what are you prepared to sacrifice to get what you deserve? And so, basically you are a dark elf. Your home, the towering city of Spire, was occupied by the High Elves 200 years ago. Now you have joined a secret organization known as the Ministry and a paramilitary cult with a single aim to overthrow the cruel High Elves and restore the Drow, they're calling it the Drow, to the rightful rulers of the city. So it's a very specific setting, very specific, like pitting the High Elves against the Drow against the High Elves. And so you've got a 220-page book and an easy D10 system. And also the setting sounds very interesting, and I think you could even if you wanted to play this as 5e or OSR, I think you could use a lot of what they're giving you here to kind of play with other systems. It has its own system, but I think there's enough in here that seems like you could port it to other systems without a lot of problems. So they give you the details to the factions, personalities, and everything making up the Spire. 10 character classes specific to the setting, including Vagabond Knights, Sorcerer Artist Idols, and Arachnid Nurse Midwives. So nice flavor, nice creative drow flavor. Then multiple extras, advances to sculpt your characters, more specifically hidden magic system, the kind of history of the Ministry, Game Mastery chapter, and then of course 50 illustrations by Adrian Stone. And that was one of the things that drew me to it. Is it's got really nice art.
Is this a recent game?
It's a couple of years, I think. Yeah, it's been kind of coming in and out of my kind of awareness, but I really liked. So the thing that is really interesting about it. So, whereas violence in traditional tabletop RPGs serves as the fun thing to do, the Spire thrusts you into armed conflict and then forces you to confront the violence. Why are you doing this? The game challenges you to answer. So, is reclaiming this home worth it? What? And I think that's a very compelling thing. And I think especially in these times where we need to kind of think about our, morality of what we're doing and the ethics to kind of pit these two groups against each other and then, kind of question that conflict. Sounded very interesting.
I have a copy of this game then.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Maybe not. I think I have a physical copy. It may be in the States.
Oh.
The book. But I think I have, at least in digital format, this plus a couple extras as well. Because it's by Grant Howitt, I think. Yeah,
the credit Rowan, Rock, and Deckard.
Yes. Then
Rowan,
I do have a
Rock,
copy
and
of this.
Oh,
I think
cool.
the title was the wrong one because I think it's like Spire is really big text, and then it's like maybe like the tower must fall or slay the Spire or something. So I wasn't immediately making the connection
I
here.
see.
But yeah.
Oh, cool.
But no, this game interested me as well, specifically because it's about violence and as a tool of rebellion.
Yes. Yeah.
Rather than we want that stuff. We're going to take it, right? It's no, we're we kind of feel justified because we're reclaiming our home, but that was 200 years ago, and how far are we going to go to take it? And
nice.
And no, you can't play one of the high elves. Yeah.
Right. I know you want to. Right. Yeah. I like that a lot. So so check that out. There's of course a PDF version of that. And they also, I'm not sure if it's still available, but they did produce a gorgeous limited edition, and maybe for original Kickstarter, original release. Yeah. So those may still be floating around there, but there is a nice hardback as well. Yeah.
I don't remember which version I got.
Oh,
nice, I think I have the hardback back in the States. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Right. Well, yeah. Speaking of Dark Elves, there's a new book coming out for 5e that lets you play as vampires, right?
Actually, I don't know if it lets you play as vampires, but that was the...
Yeah, it does.
It does,
yes,
okay.
Yes. So you can be a furry spell-casting vampire. It just gets more delicious.
Not dumping on anybody. I just kind of don't really understand the appeal of furries, but anyway.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's like Van Richtenstein's Guide to Ravenloft or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
That was recently announced, and not going to buy it because I'm not going to play D&D, though I am interested in gothic horror. And if you follow me on Twitter, I did say I was planning to ride the wave of that by making a little gothic horror supplement for Brighthammer. Don't know how that's going to work since everything's supposed to be cleaned up. And I've really been thinking about horror in broad daylight. But anyway, as aside, I think some of the discussion around this book is interesting because it looks like a lot of marginalized or freelancers from marginalized identities worked on this book, the Ravenloft book. And I was thinking about how rather, like on the one hand, I want to celebrate these people's success because they've gotten to write for the most popular role-playing game in the world, right? But on the other hand, Ravenloft, along with D&D, kind of has a history of being problematic, especially when it comes to like depictions of their fantasy romani and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sure a lot of thought went into writing this book. And I'm sure, that the people who were tapped to write this book did an excellent job and made sure there wasn't or as little problematic content in it as possible. Trying to balance that with the fact that this kind of feels like WotC trying to clean up its image a little bit, especially based on past stuff. Plus, D&D is always going to be we kill them and take their stuff, right? You kind of can't. We've discussed before. You kind of can't separate the violent and colonialism that's inherent in D&D. So, what do you do? On the one hand, great. This is I'm sure a fantastic book. Congratulations, you got to work on it. Great for WotC to hire more people from marginalized identities, yada, yada, yada. It's still
At its base.
Yeah.
Right.
And
no, I think that that's a good point, because they talked about broadening it from the Gothic horror, kind of classic Gothic horror, with these like 30 something, I forget what their realms, or they're called something.
Oh yeah, it's now like the realms of Ravenloft.
Yeah, and each of those presents like a different setting. And what's interesting about like vampires is they exist in so many cultures and so many, manifest in so many different ways. So there could be a lot of interesting things there. But if you're going to take your very classic D&D adventures, it's gonna get a little odd, So we'll see what that happens. But I agree with you. It does sound like they're kind of like, look,
And like, I'm not even saying they're doing that. I'm just saying the situation, it kind of reads that way, true or not, and
and. Like as it keeps coming up when we talk about an alignment or initiative or whatever we're talking about, like mechanically in D&D, like when does D&D stop being Dungeons and Dragons? I mean, is the game actually capable of encompassing and embracing that much before you start to say, why isn't this just another game or another setting or? Interesting. So we'll see, and we'll see kind of what the reaction is once the book comes out, because people start to devour it.
People are falling all over themselves and that was kind of another criticism, like. Yeah, and it kind of sucks you have to say it, but like all the people who were kind of like pushing back against D&D or all these aspects, do you now get to say, oh yay, all these people worked on it, it's now okay, right? And again, I haven't looked at the book, so I don't know any if or how issues were addressed, but you still have that core issue of D&D and what do you do?
Right.
But I'm more interested in, since it seems like WotC is homogenizing or making sure you can play every class and race and whatever in all of their products. Are there going to be Warforged and Tabaxi and Dragonborn in Ravenloft now? And
vampires now.
Okay. There were always vampires in Ravenloft because Strahd was the big bad, right?
No, but as a playable character class.
It's one of those things where D&D is a power fantasy and what game isn't? But it's kind of the heroic power fantasy of we're extremely capable heroes. And I never really saw how that meshed with Gothic horror, where at least the roots of Gothic horror are the protagonists are pretty helpless, right? And it's often the hubris of the antagonists that defeat them. Or like later incarnations, the heroes do become more proactive and capable. They're still vastly outclassed by, the antagonists. And how do you do horror in D&D? So I'm wondering... I'm not going to get the books. I'll be wondering forever what kind of rule changes, if any, were made to better emulate Gothic horror.
Yeah, I'm curious. Yeah.
If anyone wants to send me a copy, that's fine. I'm not buying it. So, which again kind of sucks, because there are people working on this book that I think, I do want to support and should be supported. Yeah. And for me to have to say, still not buying this, kind of feels shitty.
I get that. Yeah, definitely, because you want to, you want to encourage them to be moving in a good direction. Yep. And if you're not going to buy it, then they don't know. They'll never know. As much as you want to call out bad, poor acting, you also want to it's that change you want to see, like reward the positive stuff. But no, I don't know. Yeah. Well, let's take a look at the table.
Sure.
So speaking of something that we want to support and that really surprised me. So Federico Sons, the designer of Nibiru, sent me this review copy.
Woohoo!
And
swag.
Finally getting some physical things happening. Which is really rare for us because we're based in Japan, but he's also based in Japan.
Oh,
so
cool.
he's in Fukuoka. So that helped. I think he was a little more sympathetic. But they had a Kickstarter for a second book to support this game. This game originally kickstarted, I think, in 2018, was out in 2019. And so I did a little flip through review, so you can take a look at that on the channel. And it's a really interesting setting and a really compelling idea for a game. So the way that the terms I put it in is this kind of foregrounds character backstory by making it mechanical. Okay. So you play vagabonds who are essentially amnesiacs that have forgotten all of their history, but it's still there. So as you play the game, as you make physical rolls, as things happen to you, memories are triggered, and every memory that happens to you, you record in a journal, and that also has a mechanical either bonus or negative effect. And so the journal has eight 8 slots for memories that all have these effects. And then once you fill an entire page, then you can purchase with these memory points, which are kind of a currency for your character development, a realization. And a realization is a kind of baked in either passive or active ability, which is very powerful in the game and helps you to kind of use memories in even different way, to be able to steal, to hide, to embody physical objects with memories. Yeah, so it's a really interesting setting. So the Nibiru is a space station that is a spinning disk. And so they divide zones of this disk into kind of bands. So there's the Anumbra, the Penumbra, and the Umbra. And of course, the center is the most habitable for humans, so very developed. So Xanadu, the expansion that was just kickstarted, is kind of playing in the kind of social games and complicated city of the Anumbra.
Okay.
And but then it gets more survival and rougher the further that you go out. And of course, there's also gravity effects.
I was just about to say, it seems like the farther out you go, the heavier stuff's going to get.
Yeah.
Spinning faster,
So that it becomes, and by the time you're in the Umbra, it's very survival based, and, oxygen and gravity are very important factors. It's a very rules light system, so there's not focus on combat. So combat is resolved very simply, and basically you have a mental health track and a physical health track and a mental health track. And so you have okay and stressed, and then, so
not so good.
Right, yeah. So you build up into having these negative effects, either physical complications or mental complications, that then also color, what your character is capable of doing.
Is it more like a stress track, or does it kind of stray towards Call of Cthulhu's sanity, which can tend to be problematic? For at least for the mental stuff. Yeah,
it's not, because it's so based in dreams and memories, I think they do a good way of handling it, because everything that you're doing is so mental. Like the physical and the mental just kind of move back and forth. Right, okay. So you do something and you're like, oh my God, I remember doing this as a kid, or I remember this, and then it opens up. So I think it's less problematic and more, it fits really well mechanically with what people are doing. So it's not just you are crazy, or you're seeing things wrong, or it doesn't kind of go into mental illness as like disability and things. So I think it works really well. And I liked that idea of the players can come to the table with 0 and just kind of pick where they want to originate on this space station. And then the characters, you play your character as you create it as you play it. So very fun. And I think we should, the interesting thing about the system, though, it's a 3D4 system.
Okay.
So rolls that you're making with D4s. 4s are successes. And I was like, D4. D4s don't really roll. When they hit the table, they just go bang, and that's where you get. But they kind of solved that problem in their original Kickstarter. They do cuneiform metal D12s.
I was just about to say you could use 12.
Yeah, so as their kind of deluxe dice for the system. So 1 to 4, 3 times on a D12 rolls, and it's much and they're very beautiful. They're really beautiful. Nice. So those were also available in the second Kickstarter, which by the time we post this will be long over.
Oh, okay.
But thank you again, Federico, for the review copy. And please take a look at Nibiru. It's a very interesting setting, and I think if you're looking for something different and a very well fleshed out, maybe the first 100 pages are just setting, describing the space station and where you're at and what that means, like what you're involved in.
Is that an issue? Because there's been a couple books that I've picked up or read, and I think 13th Age was one of them, a little bit, where the 13th Age book, which if we were ever going to do a D20 based fantasy system again, my vote would be for 13th Age. Not going to do one, so it doesn't really matter. But the beginning part of 13th Age is the icons. Like I think the 12 kind of like major player deity level icons, which are interesting, but I felt the book fell into that issue of, I want to know how characters do things so that this information you're giving me kind of makes a bit more sense.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, I think I was surprised by that. I was surprised that it was all front-loaded with setting as opposed to getting to the mechanics and what the characters were. But I think because the characters are kind of blanks, that character creation is very easy and is very simplified, and the mechanics are very light. So forefronting it didn't putting that in front didn't really help you in any way kind of understand the system. So kind of understanding where you are and like how you would interact with that, and then here are the mechanics that let you do that, worked well.
Okay.
It's still, though, it's a very rich setting, and I think they even said in the second Kickstarter, this book, Xanadu, will contain a lot of the things that we wanted to put into the original book. So I don't have my head completely around like how things function, but there's definitely enough description, and each of the kind of rings, rings have these vaults of civilization that have very specific focus. Like, this is gambling, this is trading, this is, heavy industry. So, they have different focuses that you can move an adventure into one of those and kind of really understand what's going on. Maybe you're not seeing the bigger picture as well, but you'll understand what's going on and what your characters like kind of need to do.
It's kind of like a Points of Light campaign there, where like if you have these enclaves of humanity that are kind of about certain things, like is the wild space between these enclaves generally left kind of like open and nebulous in description, or is there stuff going on in the book?
There's between the vaults, there's not a heavy description about what it is. I mean, things are kind of blended, especially in the developed area. It's all kind of city, like dovetailing into each other. And then you're taking a large kind of electromagnetic barge into the heavier, less civilized areas. So the one thing that the game does really well, though, is as it's going through all of this setting, they have sparks that they're called tail sparks. And because it's electrical, thematically, everything is bioelectrical based. Cool. And the tail sparks are these little kind of hooks and this could be happening here. Your players couldn't do this. If the players meet this person, they would have to do. There's a little inspiration to like what would happen in this world. And reading through those, I think, gives you a better sense of how things are connected and how things would bump against each other.
And what characters would do.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Cool. Yeah. So definitely check it out. There's you can get the digital version very easily, and then it's published by Modifius, cool. On the web store, and I'm sure on Amazon and everywhere that they distribute as well.
Right. I'll have to go look at that then, because that sounds pretty cool. Yes. And now the little pyramid on the back makes sense if it's D4 based.
Yes, exactly. All right. So where can people find you?
On Twitter, as always, where I've just released the GM guide for the little Bright Hammer game. So now it's just the bestiary that I'm working on as part of that initial trio.
Are you going to do a little slip box for the individual books?
I don't know if I'm going to do a slip box. I've considered it. Like, I've looked at Mix and Print, and the UK and the Australia version can print A7, but it's not. You don't get that many options. So I'm wondering if I should scale it up to A6 size.
A6 is good, yeah.
But 8 pages on an A6 thing don't really seem that important. I do plan to do like expanded versions of essentially the player handbook, skills and powers that I'm going to do. And if I do those, then I think like double size A6 little booklets with kind of twice the content would be the way to go.
Yeah, nice. Gothic Horror, Eclipse Hammer.
Yeah, everything. I've gone with the bright on all of them. So yeah, if you're on Twitter, I did I teased the logo I did for Bright Jammer.
Nice. Nice.
And I was trying to think of something with bright. I came up with like Bright Roost or whatever for the Gothic Horror one, which we'll see how that goes. But
cool.
Anyway, yeah,
cool.
How about you?
Oh, so I am. It was a couple of things you should check out. So not only the flip through for Nibiru, but I did a huge 2.5 hour unboxing of Siege of the Citadel.
Wow.
So if you want to see everything that they produced for that game. So it was Modifius. So everything Modifius did for their kind of the third edition version of the, it's a second edition of the board game, but their third edition of the setting for Siege of the Citadel and all of the expansions. It's amazing. There's so much stuff. And I got an interesting, I guess I was using, my camera's decent. I got some good video of the miniatures and people were surprised at the detail and the quality of the miniatures. So so that's the core box and everything except some of the chibi minis that they released as kind of a bonus.
Cheapy or chibi?
Chibi.
Oh, because I am not interested in big-headed necromans. Yeah, no thanks.
Right. And so I also do a single panel gag cartoon. So abusecartoons.com is the website, and then both on Twitch and YouTube, Abuse Cartoons, and the Enmity Stories. So stories.enmitycorp.com. So Enmity is NMITYCORP.com for AI read speculative fiction short stories. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
I gotta market. I gotta find some market speak for that. But yeah, that's it for this week.
Yeah, cool.
So we'll be back next week and hope to see you then.
Later, mortals.
Bye.